here, you missing out. Is this show? Welcome to the We Love Wrestling spot. I'm Terry. I have Danielle from the Pretty Hills with me. I have Lauren with us also. Today we are with someone, if you're in the realm of wrestling, see what I did there, you should know about him. I've seen this guy post for many years. He has a drive that keeps going, talk about wrestling. He's unapologetic. If you don't know him, I'm going to let him introduce himself to you, sir.
Hey, what's up, man? Brian H. Waters of the Wrestling Wrealm, one half of the Wrestling Wrealm, myself and the real Dwayne Allen, also host of the Break It Down with Brian H. podcast, which is through the Wrestling Wrealm. And, you know, we got a couple other things going on. I don't know if you want me to talk about that now or later or...
Oh, we're going to get all into it.
Okay, cool.
But my first question I always ask is, what started your love of wrestling, or why do you love wrestling?
So I can't tell the story without talking about before I was born.
Okay.
My mother said when she was pregnant with me, she was on bed rest. So we're looking at the 7th, 8th, 9-month hour. And she said every time wrestling came on, I started kicking. And that's when she knew this is a boy. My grandmother was like, I don't know, maybe having a girl. My mother said, no, this is a boy. I can feel it. And when I was born, you know, because I guess I should say that my mother wasn't a wrestling fan. My grandfather and my dad and my uncle would leave the TV on. And, you know, I'm born in 86. So back in the day, everybody didn't have remotes for all the TVs in the house. So she couldn't change the channel. Well, eventually she would get hooked. This may not be popular to say now. I'm still a fan of this guy. Hulk Hogan was her favorite wrestler. That was a guy who she really cheered for. And I became, naturally, I became a huge fan. My uncle, who was essentially about 11 years older than me, more like a big brother, he was into wrestling. So every time I always, wanted to be like him. So I would watch it with him. And I didn't go to my first show until I was 18 when he actually took me, but all the pay-per-views I watched that I could see, at the time it was only 4 pay-per-views a year. And I think one day I was like, wait, we actually watched all the pay-per-views in like 94. So the WrestleManias, my mother and father ordered 9, 10, 11 for me and so forth. So I had that drive as a young age. I didn't watch a lot of the cartoons and the Marvel superheroes. So when the movies come out, I'm kind of like lost in the sauce, like where a lot of my friends were very heavy in the comic books and wrestling. I was just strictly professional wrestling, WWE, WCW. And then we didn't have cable. So I was stuck watching some of the same tapes. And I always called my famous 4 tapes: Royal Rumble 96, Survivor Series 95, WrestleMania 11 and WrestleMania 9. I watched those so much that I can almost to this day recite them in without, just I can go with whether it's Bobby Heenan or Gorilla Monsoon or, Jerry Lawler, Vince McMahon, Tony Schiavone. I can go with them with the commentary because I watched the tapes so much. And then around 98, so I was out wrestling, dare say, for about a year and a half. 98, when one Saturday night, I saw Shotgun Saturday Night on. First thing I did was grab a tape to record it. And I see Stone Cold in the ring with the WWE Championship. And it made no sense to me. I said, wait, so people are cheering Stone Cold. And, I just jumped right back in full steam ahead and been with it ever since.
Okay. I like what you said with the tapes and everything. So, born in '86. Let's see. Did you ever have a box where you just had to click everything to get the shows to come up on the TV? Did you have a box?
No, we ain't had a box, but we definitely had the
we
turn.
had a box.
Yeah, you talking about for the pay-per-views?
Yeah, you had to have the little brown box to get the pay-per-views back in the day.
No, I wish. I will say I had a friend, shout out to my boy Daryl. He had it, and around the Attitude Era. So the summer of 98, every Monday after the pay-per-view, he was the first person I called to get the results.
Oh, yes. Okay. Now, the tape trading, when you said that, it brought me back to a time.
Mm-hmm.
So you had your top four. Is there a tape that you always tried to get your hands on that you just couldn't get back in the day before we had all the internet and the network and all this?
Wow, that's a good question. Nobody has never asked me that. I don't know if there was a specific tape, but I will say that one of the first tapes I remember renting later on was WrestleMania 15. I remember going to Blockbuster and I saw it and I was like, oh, I gotta watch this, because I didn't see that pay-per-view live. And like you said, you would go to the store and they would have the tapes, but um, a lot of times I wouldn't have the money or whatever. But that was when I remember I rented that and I had 2 VCRs, so I copied the tape. There was when the WrestleMania Legacy tapes came out, I wanted to buy the box set. I didn't know, but I was chopping it down. So the first one I bought was WrestleMania 6, and that was because even though I was 3 years old, getting ready to turn 4, that was the last WrestleMania I watched with my grandfather. And when I saw the tape available, when I watched it, I remember I bought it on like a Saturday and watched it that whole entire night. When it got to the main event and they showed the package with Hogan and Warrior, it immediately, and I was 13 when I bought this tape, immediately took me back to being in the car at 3.5 years old when my grandfather was describing the crisscross to some of the other deacons in the church. And by the time we got home, got to my grandmother's house, because my dad was like, oh, you coming with me? And my grandfather was like, no, he's coming with me to watch WrestleMania. And it's so funny to even think my dad overruled my grandfather. But when we got home, got to my grandmother's house, I remember all the deacons, it felt like the whole church, granted it wasn't, but it felt like the whole church was already there watching WrestleMania. So, and granted, I don't remember vividly watching it then, but I do remember my grandfather describing the crisscross on the way.
Man, those memories of those times. Lauren, our expert over here, our social media, she's been talking about she knows a lot about you, so I'm gonna kick it to hers.
I follow Twitter. That's it. I mean, I might be a social media. I love Twitter. I'm not gonna lie. But I know I became familiar with the Wrestling Wrealm because you would offer to answer our questions, and I would just fill it up with wrestling questions.
I appreciate that.
So no, I apprciate you asking them. I still want to know why wrestlers wet their hair, but anyways, but I guess I want to go with more you're in journalism,
yes.
Correct? So what was your inspiration behind getting into that, and how does it relate back to sports? Does it relate back to wrestling, or?
Yeah and no. Even as a child, I was always one to mimic the commentators. I could always remember the iconic calls. So when Howard Finkel died, I couldn't help but walk around just yelling and new, because I always remembered that. So even funny story, back in 2000, I was in 8th grade. The 5th graders decided for the talent show that they were going to wrestle. And at the last minute, they said, we don't have an announcer. So I was like, I could do it. And I had a ball being able to be Howard Finkel. And they had the Aggression CD, to the music. And it was fun. But I loved sports, wasn't good enough to play it, but I always wanted to, at one point, I wanted to be on camera. I wanted to be a broadcaster. I wanted to call games. But then I realized I want to learn the production side of things. But I have had the opportunity to call a match. I worked at WSU, and there was a show where they didn't have a color guy. And the owner, the only good thing he's ever done in his life was said, hey, how about Brian do it? Because he already knows the stories, because I was the social media manager. So I knew all the storylines. And, at the time there was Leva Bates, Mia Yim, Mercedes Martinez, Jordan Grace. All these people were on the card. Penelope Ford, Maria Manic. Matter of fact, that was the day they won the tag titles. So I got to call the matches, and I don't think I did a great job, to be honest with you. One, because not to make excuses, but I know that when you're in that seat, it's important to have chemistry with the other person. Right. And I didn't know the other person as much. We just didn't know each other. We didn't talk I mean, we talked about, hey, how you doing, especially working there. But we never really had, like, if it was like me and Dwayne, I wouldn't have been so nervous because I know when we're doing a show, I know when I could jump in, when he gonna jump in. You feel me? So, but that was cool. But in college, we had to write about our favorite broadcaster. The person I wrote about was Jim Ross. So, I've always had a love for the way matches were called. I understand, like, yes, Gorilla and Bobby, one of the best duos, if not the best. To me, JR and the King is what I grew up on. I heard a little bit of Gorilla and Bobby, but I've been one. I put my Mount Rushmore of broadcasters, and I got a lot of heat because I said Michael Cole, and you may remember, and people like Michael Cole, but I look at who got us through the Attitude Era. It was Michael Cole, so I always appreciate the craft.
Awesome. That's interesting. That's cool. I didn't know that part about you stepping in. So then let me ask, if you could step into any, promotion or production right now with anybody for one night and kind of broadcast, who would it be and with whom?
Wow, that's a good question.
I'm saying,
do they have?
Brian, we ain't playing. We coming with the questions. We got to know.
Do they have to be famous, or do they have to be?
No, they don't have to be famous.
Oh, well, I'm taking the real Dwayne Allen, and we're gonna call Raw, right? No, actually, no, we're gonna call SmackDown. AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan.
You'll call that.
That's a match I don't think I'll ever get tired of. There's been matches that throughout the years that's like, okay, like how many times are we gonna see John Cena and Randy Orton, right? And now if you gave it to me, I probably wouldn't be as upset as I would have in 2013, 2014. I can tell you it's 2020 and I still don't want to see Randy Orton and the Big Show again. But your AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan, I mean, they always have incredible matches. Even when they were on that run at the end of 2019, I think it was 2018, it didn't bother me because it was like, I can do this. Before Kofi Mania took off, I was like, I want to see this match at WrestleMania,
Still do. I still do.
Yeah.
You and Dwayne, I would listen. I do listen anyways, but I would definitely listen to that, especially my favorite. Unfortunately, I call Daniel Bryan Miss Brie Bella, but
come on.
That's just me.
The disrespect she has for him, it's ridiculous.
That's me. I don't have my WWE book of rules that he wrote the foreword to, Terry. Anyways, maybe moving on.
Let's ask Brian about that, though. The WWE book of rules.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have it with me. I have a book of rules. It's kind of a satire book, and Daniel Bryan wrote the foreword, and it's basically just sketches and rules that he supposedly found an envelope while he was walking around backstage that someone dropped, and it's like the rules and regulation of being a wrestler in the WWE, and he had it, and he took it, and he made it into a book, and he wrote the foreword for it because he wanted to share it with us. I'm going to write a book review on it, Terry.
All right.
Next, you're a Ravens fan?
Oh, absolutely. Lamar Jackson.
We are not getting. Oh my goodness.
What's next for the NFL, and what do you see? Like, I'm just curious what you think is going to happen because we got people in Texas saying Texas is not even going to have football, and they are football.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you see that going? And then how do you see the Ravens moving on after the season they had this year?
We are not talking about the Ravens.
So, it says the person was a fan of the team that was stolen from Baltimore. I should say.
Were we stolen or did we run away?
Well, you're right, but you should have left the name. Come on now.
Oh man, we don't want to we go somewhere totally different with this.
But you know what? We got two Super Bowl rings.
Off of his.
We got 2 rings since then, so we're good. But the thing is, I honestly, as somebody who works in media relations for Johns Hopkins Medicine, I personally, and this is me not speaking on behalf of the organization, obviously, but I don't see where there's any room for football. I don't see where there's any room for anything, even wrestling, to be honest with you. And I was one who thought the WWE had a good bubble. Apparently I was wrong, but I thought they had a good bubble in the beginning. So I don't see why football should continue. It does suck because the Ravens do have a young team. So yeah, they could be built to compete for the next few years. But you also got those guys like your Mark Ingrams, your Earl Thomases, who will be a year older next year or the year after next. So the game that they would give us this year may not be the same game they'll give us in the next few years, if to say when COVID is under control. But I'm just not a fan of football going on right now. As Kelsey and I said with our five friends on Breaking Through Glass Ceilings, you gotta value life. Sports can wait. You value life.
Fair enough. And I agree with you. I didn't think wrestling was going to continue either. And then I thought maybe they had the cure down there that they could continue wrestling.
Well, the thing is like, my thing was back then, I thought that they were pretty much going from home to in the performance center. And then they'll be fine. But when you had wrestlers, traveling from state to state, we still don't know about the coronavirus. And then you remember at that time, there was people there was only, 8 people you would see on TV because they didn't have the makeshift crowd there. I said, oh, okay, you know what? That's fine. I argue with people. I said, no, they got to continue because they found a way to do it safely. But when you find out things such as Kayla Braxton haven't had COVID-19, Renee Young haven't had COVID-19. I don't think she didn't have it then, but, because she wasn't at a performance center, but Kayla Braxton had it. I don't remember her ever taking a break. Maybe she took a week or two off from tapings, but I just think it's unfortunate, and I thought they had a system in place that if they did it the way it was perceived, it could have worked.
Right. Yeah, I think we all thought that. Getting back to wrestling before I get fired from my social media job.
As long as you don't bring up the Ravens.
Oh, man.
Whatever.
Y'all got a good team. I like Jacoby Brissett. I think he should be a starter.
I did too. I thought he had injuries that kind of hindered him.
Hold on,
and then injuries to other people.
He tried to take a shot right there. We are not about to do that with the coach.
I do. I like him. I don't think he gets his respect.
I agree. I don't know if you're taking a shot, but I agree.
I'm not.
I'm a Jacoby fan for sure.
Can I say I'm rooting for everybody black?
I'm trying to.
Y'all done made my dad go out and buy a Colts jersey for the first time in a long time. So yeah. But getting back to wrestling, this week we've really focused on the women's evolution. And I think the big question is, my big question all the time, my favorite question to ask is, who is on your women's Mount Rushmore of wrestling?
Boy, oh boy. So I'm going to be biased, extremely biased. I'm going to go Sweet Georgia Brown. She paved the way for the black women's wrestlers and endured a lot.
Talk about it.
I know a lot of people may have their reservations towards this person, but I mean, she is who she is, and that's the Fabulous Moolah.
Facts.
I'm going to go Trish Stratus over Sable and Sunny because I feel that longevity, when you really think about it, we polarize the Attitude Era as this great thing. But when you really look at it, it was only 4 years. Some say 5, some say 3. I think of 98 to 02. So, but you look at Trish, she came up in the Attitude Era, transitioned from a diva to a wrestler, and, was the first woman to main event Monday Night Raw and, a real serious competition, women's champion multiple times. So I put her there. And that last spot, that's tough. But I gotta go. Oh man! So I'm. It's really tied between the 4 horsemen because I think you can make an argument legitimately by switching them out. You can make the argument Bayley being the first person to have all, the Grand Slam women's champion. You could talk about Sasha when it comes to skills and maybe not being booked right, but she had the skills. Then you got Becky Lynch, who have that crossover appeal and was at one point the most over person in the company. But if I have to pencil somebody in, and if you tell me I got to pick somebody, I'm going with the person that I've gone on record multiple times saying when it's all said and done, I think she's going to be the greatest women's wrestler. And that is a person, in my opinion, who has the third best WrestleMania match in history. That's Charlotte Flair.
Jar Jar.
When you look at Charlotte, you look at somebody who's a natural athlete, took to the sport of professional wrestling. I always talk about this. You look at father and son duos in sports. Yes, Barry and Bobby Bonds in baseball, probably the greatest duo in baseball. Ken Griffey Sr. was a good player, a good hand. Ken Griffey Jr. was a Hall of Famer. You look at Michael Jordan. His sons were great basketball players. They were good. They good enough to get to college, but they wasn't what he was. LeBron James and Bronny, they are looking to be that, what I call the Ric Flair and Charlotte. Rick is, in so many people's opinion, the greatest of all time for the men, and Charlotte will be, in so many people's opinion, the greatest of all time for women. So that's the reason why I got to go with Charlotte Flair.
Agreed.
So yeah, I'm definitely
I'm a very big Charlotte Flair fan.
I gotta put. I know people want to put Mae Young, Sensational Sherry, and so many people, but me as a black man, and for her contributions and sacrifices, I gotta put Sweet Georgia Brown on the list. She's on mine, and that's the thing. It's subjective.
Facts. That's why she asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard so many different women, and we haven't even got to mine yet. And mine's totally different from everybody, so I love it.
When we
taking my
get
notes.
it? Huh? When will we get it?
I don't know. So I really don't. So when we started this whole thing, I told them I didn't even want to do the interviews. It was supposed to be everybody else. And so we started spotlighting people and everything. And I just listened to all the questions everybody answered. I'd be like, man, maybe one day, I'll get on and we'll talk some wrestling, because my memory goes back to, like, just take it back to the tape trading. So It was one tape that I saw one time, but I couldn't. I remembered it and everything, but I never saw it again till the WWE Network uploaded it. It was the Road Warriors versus the Midnight Express in the scalpel match.
Okay.
Where Jim Cornette fell and broke both his ankles. I remember that in my head from like 3 years old.
Okay.
And I kept like, man, where is this at? I remember this match. Me and my dad used to watch it from 3 to 7. Never saw it again till the WWE Network came, and I was like,
oh man, I know you ain't want nobody to bother you. You just wanted to like.
I watched the whole thing. I was like, don't talk to me, don't touch me. It takes you right back to that when you was a child. When I was a child, and I was like, oh my God, I'm sitting in Mississippi in my grandma's living room and wrestling zone, and it's the greatest thing ever. So I got to ask you this, because I've seen some of your podcasts. I've seen some of what you do.
Appreciate it.
If you could book a match, because you call some matches, if you could book a match with any two people, or any type, not even two people, any match that you could book and you could see it go on, what match would you book? Because I seen where your air starts at and everything you said. What is the one match that you want to see?
The one match I want to see is actually, we didn't get it. We were supposed to. The Rock, Stone Cold, and Triple H. That Survivor Series still disappoints me. The fact that we never got that match. Obviously, looking back at it, it probably would have been a disappointment, just because it doesn't look like they were going to let up on Triple H at that time. But that's definitely the match I would book if I could. But if you say, if you want to talk about a tale of two eras, a lot of people say Hogan and Austin, or Austin and Goldberg. I actually want to see Austin and John Cena. I would love to see how those two would make the styles work and see what would come out of that. It's quite a few, man.
Yeah, I mean, one day we gonna fantasy book a whole card to see what's going on. But I've had that thought and wanted to see it, and Cena on Instagram be picking at him. So
yeah, he do. And if honorable mention, Bret Hart versus Kurt Angle. I mean, just to think. And I remember
we wouldn't even be ready for that.
Yeah, WrestleMania 26. Kurt was disappointed when he saw Brett wrestle Vince. He's like, I wanted that match. He's like, Kurt, I can't give you what I would have given you. Like, you imagine those two in their prime, it would have been awesome.
I couldn't.
And you think about Kurt, like, the crazy thing is his best years were actually in TNA. But he came back to WWE and still proved that he was better than half of the roster. Even broke it down.
I don't want to get on my whole TNA Impact tangent. People go, oh man, them years from like 2007 to about 2014 in TNA, people slept on a lot of that stuff that goes on, but it's a lot of great stuff.
It was a lot. Bobby Roode and what's his name? His former tag partner, James Storm.
Beer Money. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't like this guy, but Austin Aries and Bobby Roode put on,
Oh, that whole series.
Yeah. They made, and I don't care what anybody say, them two and Davey Richards and what's his name? Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards.
Yes.
Those two made those matches in WWE go to another level. The CM Punks and the John Cenas. Those matches were made John Cena step up. Like 2011 is kind of a slept on summer. The summer of Punk. That was slept on because you saw WWE make that transition to say, okay, we got to get serious about what we're doing because these other companies are like, the internet's taking off, Twitter's taking off. These companies are coming with good wrestling. We got to step our game up. And then you remember the next year, I think you had Caitlyn and AJ go out there and put on a great match because of what was going on with the women in TNA.
Ooh, the women of TNA.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren, I'm telling you, we're going to talk about it one day. I'm trying to tell you. So, Brian, before we leave out, we see the Wrestling Wrealm. We see Break It Down with Brian H.
Yep.
What else you got on your platform? Can you let us know, like, before we leave out of here?
Yeah, so with the Wrestling Wrealm, it's it's the real Dwayne Allen and I's really our network, kind of sort of like what you guys, we love wrestling. So we were in college. As a way to build our production skills, we created a wrestling show that's almost 10 years old now. And we've since then not just having a traditional show, but done some spinoffs. So as we tape this on Thursday, Thursday, July 16th and Friday, July 17th, you can actually get to know us a little bit more with our 21 questions segment on the Wrestling Wrealm's YouTube channel. Just, it's 21 questions from him, 21 answers, vice versa. And we also, we got a few promos out there. If you ever seen the NWO paid promotions, well, we pay homage to the NWO by doing that. We cut it up. Took us 3 hours to shoot. I remember, I think I got like 3 hours of sleep that day before going to school, work, but it was definitely some of the most fun we had. We also have a few stuff where Dwayne felt the need to put on his Ric Flair robe while I was trying to give an advertisement. So there's some cool stuff there to check out. But we also got some stuff in the archives. We talked top WWE champions, worst WWE champions, best Intercontinental champions. So like if you're ever bored and you want to hear two people talk about wrestling, we got plenty of content on the channel that you can binge through.
So can you tell us the social medias where we can find you at and everything?
Yeah, so you can find me at Brian H. Waters on all platforms, and the Wrestling Wrealm at Wrestling Wrealm on all platforms. Realm spelled WREALM. Shout out to my mother. That was her idea, using alliteration. So you can find us there. We're on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Absolutely free. A lot of entertaining content. We're on all podcast platforms where you find Break It Down with Brian H. And then also I do Wrestling for the Culture, where I talk about, generally I interview wrestlers of color. We sit back, have conversations about, their business, their journey. I talk with, who else? Let's see. I spoke with Caprice Coleman from Ring of Honor. I spoke with Kenneth Wade, Roxy, Kaya Dream, Amber Rodriguez, and Snoop Strikes, formerly known as, in MLW, he's known as Cotto Brazil. So I talked with quite a few people, so you can definitely check that out as well.
Right. Brian, I always say thank you for coming here. Like I said, probably about 2016, I saw
Okay.
his podcast being posted up every week, and I was like, yo, he's still going. So now it's 2020, 4 years later. Um, I'm hearing great things. So just to be like a person knowing when you was just posting it in a group and now it's here at this point, keep going. I'm supporting you. We behind you. Lauren loves the show. He told you how to listen to him if you want to. Um, not if you want to, you need to. Uh, I just subscribed to your YouTube channel and everything. Gave him a follow. Y'all do the same. So I'm Terry. We had Danielle from the Pretty Heels with us. She left at some point. With Lauren, this was with Brian H. Waters from the Wrestling Wrealm. Like I always say, if I love wrestling and you love wrestling, then we love wrestling. It's too sweet for the culture.